Did send out updated information so people can sign in multiple ways now. And I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Let me first remind you, it's also in front of you on the screen. This meeting will be recorded, and presentation materials that you see tonight will be sent to all registered participants and listed on our website, so they will be available. Earlier, if you signed in anonymously, when you leave a chat, if you'd like, we'd appreciate if you would leave your name in the chat with your message when we get to the end of the program and we have a chance for people to ask questions, and that way we can follow up with anyone if we don't get through all their questions tonight. You see on the screen before you the agenda for the evening. We'll start with a welcome and introduce you to some of the great members of our team here in DEQ. There's a QR code in front of you. If you didn't pre-register, here's your opportunity now to register, and that will make sure you get copies of the presentation afterwards. After those initial introductions, there'll be a presentation. So we'll talk to you about what the climate pollution reduction grant opportunities are and what North Carolina is planning. At the end of that time, we'll have breakout sessions that will give you a chance to go to a separate virtual room to have some more focused conversations about different sectors related to CPRG and hear your ideas on projects and programs that we might be able to fund to address those different sectors and reduce carbon emissions from them. And then we'll come back together, have a brief report out from those breakout sessions, and have time for comments. And that's when I was mentioning, if you have any comments that don't get answered in the breakout session or through the presentation tonight, that's your chance to put it in the chat. If we don't have time to answer them all tonight, we can get back to you later if you let us know who you are and if you've registered, so we have contact information. And then you see here at the bottom our goals for tonight. So we're going to introduce you to EPA's Climate Pollution Reduction Grants Program. We're going to talk about how North Carolina is leveraging our planning grant, how we're going to identify ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions across the state, and then tell you how you can provide feedback to us on climate priorities and proposed measures. So let's start first with team introductions. My name is Julie Woosley. I'm the director of the State Energy Office here in North Carolina, which is housed within Department of Environmental Quality. So first, I'm going to ask the other members of the State Energy Office to introduce themselves, and I'm going to start with Helen. Go ahead, Helen.
Good evening. Thank you for being with us this evening. I'm Helen Hossley, and I am a special projects manager within the department working in the State Energy Office on the Weatherization Assistance Program, as well as the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant.
David.
My name is David Stratton, and I'm currently the CPRG project manager. I'll be working with the State Energy Office to collect all of this information and roll it into some valuable projects that we'll be submitting to the EPA as part of our implementation grant process.
Bridget.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bridget Parrish Wilson, and I'm an engineer in the State Energy Office, and I am working on the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant, along with the Solar for All program and a grid resilience program as well.
We have other staff members from DEQ here tonight. I'm going to hand it off next to Stephanie.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Belliard. I'm Senior Engineer and Assistant Secretary, and I am supporting some of the technical aspects of our CPRG grant efforts.
And next over to Division of Air Quality, Mike.
Good evening. I'm Mike Eberzinskis. I'm the director of the Division of Air Quality, and our team's focused on the greenhouse gas emissions inventory part of this project.
Sarah. Sarah might be busy. She's with our public information officer section. And I believe that's everyone in DEQ. I'm going to pass it over to Connor next in the governor's office.
Really nice to see everybody, and excited for a really good discussion tonight. My name is Connor Mulderig. I'm in Governor Cooper's office, and I'm a climate change policy advisor. predominantly focused on implementing the governor's clean transportation plan, building decarbonization, and then federal funding procurement. So I'm our office's lead on CPRG, and yeah, really excited to hear all your thoughts tonight. I'm not sure who next to kick it to, Julie, so I'll kick it back to you.
I know we have someone here from Department of Commerce. Tim, I believe, is with us.
Yeah, hi guys. My name's Tim Mathis. I'm the Regional Operation Director for the Division of Workforce Solutions for Commerce. I'm in the western part of the state. I support Rutherford County all the way out to Cherokee to the Georgia and Tennessee borders, and represent all the NC Works career centers in that region as well. So glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Tim. Anyone I missed in state government that's working on CPRG who's joining us tonight?
We do have Debbie and Nori if they are prepared to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Debbie Reinhardt. I'm a consultant on the project helping with preparation of the grant. Thank you.
Thank you. And Nori?
Hello everyone. My name is Nui. I'm the data analyst and also the financial specialist for this grant, and mainly using the EJ Screen and CGS this national tools to understand and support the grant.
Thank you. I believe that's the whole team, and we'll move on to the next slide and get started on our presentation. So for those who aren't familiar, climate pollution reduction is important because of climate change and the impacts that come to our state from that. North Carolina in particular experiences frequent extreme weather events, and those can interrupt our economy, affect individuals' lives, health and safety. There are a lot of impacts, and you see some of them listed down here. 17 billion in estimated damages statewide. I understand we're actually the third highest state in hurricane damages in the country, which is pretty amazing when you think about the Gulf Coast and Florida, and yet we're still number 3 in dollar amount of damage from hurricanes. FEMA declared public assistance in 51 counties. Over 5,000 people were rescued by air, water, and land recently in North Carolina. Over 21,000 people sheltered, and that was on one night alone. So this happens frequently in North Carolina, particularly compared to other states. And the impacts are not spread evenly. Next slide, please. This lists some statistics about our emissions and our impacts. We are actually the 14th highest greenhouse gas emitting state in the US. If we were a country, that would rank us about 40th in the world, higher than countries like Belgium, Chile, Austria, or Denmark. We are now the 9th most populous state in the country, and our emission reductions matter to us, but also to the whole nation and globally as well. Next slide, please. So when you think about climate and climate change, climate impacts, climate pollution, and I'm going to mention here very briefly, we often talk about climate pollution or carbon pollution. Tonight, we're going to use those terms somewhat interchangeably, although they are actually technically slightly different. Carbon pollution is a subset of climate pollution. Greenhouse gas emissions is often used interchangeably also with climate emissions. But for the purposes of tonight, we're going to use those terms interchangeably. But when there are impacts, those impacts are not spread evenly among our population. And that makes sense when you think about coastal areas that would have more impacts from a hurricane, when you think about low-lying areas that would have more flood impacts, steep areas in the mountains that would have more landslide impacts, and so on. And additionally, some areas and some individuals and communities have a harder time recovering from those impacts, either because of frequency of the impacts, because of socioeconomic issues, because of other resources in their area that would allow them to recover. So we need to think about all of these issues when we think about climate impacts: social vulnerability, the change in exposure in different areas, infrastructure and housing disparities, and inequalities in policy and programming that impact different areas differently. and how we can help protect those vulnerable populations and help them prepare for and recover from those impacts. Next slide, please. So the next part is going to talk about federal funding, and Helen Hosley is going to give you an overview of that. Helen.
Thank you, Julie. So the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant was enacted as part of the Inflation Reduction Act that was signed in 2022. And so the purpose of the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant is obviously to build a clean energy economy through investments. And we expect to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by approximately 40% in 6 years, while supporting disadvantaged communities with clean energy. The EPA has received $5 billion under this program, and there are 2 phases to the program. There's the planning grants phase, which is phase 1, and then there's also the implementation grant phase, which is phase 2. And so where we are, next slide, please, is we're in the planning grant phase. And the reason why you're here is we really want to hear what possible projects, funding gaps, barriers that you have to projects that will affect our climate and the pollution in the future. So the planning grants were created to obviously support climate planning, and also they could be used to update any type of plans that we do have that are related to climate, energy, or sustainability. The next phase would be the implementation grants, and I will talk a little bit about both of these in just a few minutes. So the overarching goals and objectives of the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant is to build on what we have. And North Carolina has been really fortunate and ahead of the curve in a lot of ways, where we have a lot of plans. We have engaged a vendor that has looked at 48 of our existing state plans, including the Clean Energy Plan, the executive orders that have come down, and really seeing where there are gaps or what rises to the top as far as any type of measures or programs that we've had instituted over the years. So we're building on our well-established leadership that we have. And then just as important, all this information is grounded in science. And the whole goal of the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant is to continue to improve the health and well-being of our North Carolinians, as well as reducing greenhouse gas emissions and improve our air quality. Now, the timeline for the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant is really kind of tight initially. So what we are doing right now, and I talked a little bit about how our vendor looked at 48 different plans that we had and saw where the gaps are and what rises to the top. Well, we're going to take all that information, in addition to the information you're going to give us tonight, and we're creating what's called the Priority Climate Action Plan, or PCAP for short. And that PCAP is due March 4th, 2024. So in just a few short months from now, 3 months from now. On the heels of that, we have the implementation grant. So the implementation grant is going to take into consideration all the things we said in the PCAP and say, okay, now these are the things that we're going to be implementing. And so the PCAP, the planning grant, the money available for that was non-competitive. We got about $3 million to do that, but the implementation grants are competitive. So we'll be competing with every other state in the country for our projects, if you will. So April 1st is when the implementation grant is due. And then a little bit further on down the line, the things that didn't make it into the Priority Climate Action Plan, the PCAP, we will then have another opportunity to do a more comprehensive and a little more time, thank you, to put together a CCAP, something that's more comprehensive. And then even further down the road, then we're gonna, in 2027, evaluate those projects, how they're doing, what measures we instituted, and create a final report in 2027. So I talked about what are the things that have risen to the top, and so we actually have 6 particular sectors that have risen to the top into in North Carolina, and you can see them here: electric power, transportation, industry, residential, commercial buildings, waste and materials management, and then the agriculture and natural working lands. So we're looking at, those are the major polluters, if you will, within the state of North Carolina. And then in part of the PCAP plan, there's 4 major components. Obviously, reducing greenhouse gas emissions is one of the biggest things that is going to be evaluated. But along with that, when EPA is looking at our implementation grant, they're going to be looking at how well are we addressing the issues that are facing our underserved communities, and how well are we, what's our plan for workforce development? Because with the clean energy transition, we're going to need a whole lot more in different types of qualified people. So how are we addressing that? And then the final component is, of the measures or projects that we are looking at, do we have the authority to really implement them? And can we leverage them with existing programs and resources? So those are just the highlights of that particular, of the PCAP. Now, I mentioned earlier that the implementation grants are competitive. The EPA anticipates awarding between 30 and 115 individual grants, and they range between $2 million and $500 million. And so we have, the grants are to support the deployment and development of technologies and solutions that will reduce our greenhouse gases. And so there are 2 major competitions. There's the general competitions for states and municipalities, and then a competition for tribes and territories. So the tribes and territories aren't competing against something larger like a state. And so as we said earlier, the applications are being accepted now through April 1st of 2024. How to apply? So some of you may already have projects that are out there or would like to be considered to have the project included in our PCAP. We would love it if you partnered with us and be included in our larger implementation effort, because how the grants are structured is that we would, the states overall from all this money is we're going to receive about 90% of the funds. But there is a way you can target an application for an individual grant, but as long as your project is included in North Carolina's PCAP, it can be included. But then you would be competing against what the state is saying that they're going to be asking for. Important things about this grant, though, there is no matching matching funds or any cost sharings, and as you can see here in blue, the funds awarded under this program cannot be used to meet the matching funds or requirement under another federal grant program. 2 very important caveats. And with all that said, we got to look and see what our baselines are, right? Like, how is this all, where do we, what's our starting point? And Mike Abrazinskis is going to now tell you about that baseline.
All right, thank you so much, Helen, and good evening, everyone. Again, Mike Abrazinskis with the Division of Air Quality. So the concept we're talking about here tonight is the development of a priority climate action plan for our state, and ultimately a set of priority climate action measures that will drive emissions of GHGs lower. So that process starts with a data-driven analysis, one that will answer several questions. First, where do the GHG emissions currently come from? What source sectors contribute the most? And how are those emissions projected to change in the future with the current on-the-books policies and measures? And at the end of that data-driven analysis, we should all have a vision, right, of what areas need to be addressed and what areas can best we can best apply the CPRG and other infrastructure funding opportunities to help achieve additional emissions reductions. So let's start with a discussion of the baseline data set, and that's what's here on the slide right now. It's our state's GHG emissions profile, often referred to as the emissions inventory. So this is the 2018 baseline data that we're working with. It shows the relative contributions on a percent basis of the total statewide GHG emissions of each of the different source sectors. So you can see the transportation sector is our leading source of GHG emissions in our state currently, followed closely by the electric generating sector, the industrial sector, the agricultural sector, and then waste, residential, and commercial sectors. This accounting of the emissions also recognizes our state's tremendous potential to offset carbon emissions through its land and forest resources. And so our latest analysis shows that land use and forestry sequestered 26% of the total gross emissions in 2018. Another interesting data point, 81% of the total emissions comes from fossil fuel combustion across all categories. And when we compare this 2018 baseline to a 2005 baseline, it shows a 23% reduction in GHG emissions. So we've made great progress from 2005 to the current baseline showed here of 2018 in reducing GHGs in our state. But we have a long way to go to get to net zero by 2050. So on the next slide, we show some of the projected emissions and how they change in the future with the current on-the-books policies and measures through 2030. We also include a line showing the projections of sequestered carbon through our land and forest resources. This difference between the emissions from the different source sectors, again, that's the top 3/4 of this table, and the sequestered carbon from sinks, illustrated there as net carbon sinks toward the end of the table. The difference between those two is illustrated at the bottom of the table as net emissions, and that's the red text at the bottom of the table. So a few observations from these data. If we look at the future projections for the transportation sector emissions, that particular row in the table, you see a relatively flat profile with modest decreases in emissions over time. This illustrates that we should continue to keep this sector as a priority focus for additional reductions. If we look at the projections of the electric generation and use sector, that particular row in the table, we see a steeper projection of emissions decreases. And we expect that to be, or there to be even greater reductions in that sector than what's shown here, as we transition to a lower carbon intense generation mix, including significant no carbon generation sources via Session Law 2021-165, also known as House Bill 951, also known as Energy Solutions for North Carolina, which Governor Cooper signed into law in October of 2021. So on the next slide, just a few additional notes here on some of the leading source sectors. First, on the transportation sector, there are federal vehicle standards that are going to help us achieve additional reductions of a variety of GHG emissions from the transportation sector, and other funding opportunities, such as the Volkswagen settlement funds and federal Diesel Emission Reduction Act grants, are helping reduce emissions in the transportation sector. Over in the electric generation and use sector, the aforementioned Session Law 2021-165, also known as House Bill 951 from 2021, again, which Governor Cooper signed into law in 2021, that's going to help drive GHG emissions downward as we transition to a lower carbon intense generation mix, including significant no carbon renewable generation resources. All right, so that's all that I have on the data analysis this evening. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Stephanie, for the next segment. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. So far you've heard a lot about, what has positioned North Carolina well to be competitive with our CPRG implementation grants and our plan to further leverage our planning funding as well. So what I'm going to discuss is how we are developing our priority climate action plan, how we're synthesizing information that Helen highlighted in terms of our various reports, and how we're building a framework to have a comprehensive overview of what can be done across multiple sectors across the state to reduce our emissions and reach our net zero goals. So in this aspect, I wanted to bring us back to the overarching goal of the planning grant and what our goal is to work towards. What we'll focus on in our implementation grants is the efforts are revolving around identifying ways that we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions through measures. And you've heard measures already from multiple aspects in our presentation, but when you hear that, think about the fact that it can be a program, it can be a policy, it can be projects, or it can be implementation of a tangible effort towards reducing greenhouse gas emissions, such as converting vehicles from gasoline to electric, or having lower carbon fuels. So David, go ahead and advance the slides on here. So what we're doing is we're currently in, I would say, steps 1 through 4 right now, where we have been working to synthesize all of our state reports, comprehensively put together all the measures that have been identified across those multiple reports, and most importantly, look at gaps. And what's important in our gap analysis is we could have some state reports that were done 1 year ago, and sometimes the science can move rather quickly, and we have something new that can be brought forward to look at ways to decarbonize North Carolina across multiple sectors. But there also could be other state reports that were done a few years ago, and again, science and other things and technologies have evolved, and it allows us to add towards ways that we can reduce our emissions. The next step is looking at the relative benefits of those measures. Those can both be qualitative benefits, or they can also be benefits that we can quantitatively basically put numbers to in terms of quantifying what those benefits are. So in step 4, we're looking at prioritizing those measures that we have available. And that also takes into account those benefits that I had mentioned, but it also takes into account other aspects that we'll cover in subsequent slides. And what's most important is right now in step 5. This is where we are today, talking to our stakeholders to get broad feedback on what we are planning to do, have our breakout sessions, and have an opportunity to talk with each one of you in more detail about what we're thinking about in terms of prioritization and some of the directions that we see North Carolina can go. We will be taking all of our stakeholder feedback that will be taken during our breakout sessions today, and also through other means that we will go over at the conclusion of this presentation. But we will incorporate your feedback into various aspects of our planning grant, as well as taking into account the direction that we go with our implementation grants. Once we finish all of this, we will have a priority climate action plan that will go out for public comment. But most importantly, will help us lead into the development of our implementation grant that will be submitted by our April 1st deadline that Helen had provided in previous slides. Next slide, please. So how did we identify measures? We do have a consultant that's working with us to go through our existing reports. There are a total of 48 that were reviewed and used to summarize the measures that we are currently going through. Those are also goals, existing actions, proposed actions, and we categorize the best that we could relative to that sector. And those sectors do align with the North Carolina greenhouse gas inventory that Mike Abrazinskis had shared. That way it'll allow us to understand the opportunities for those reductions, and then how we can reduce our overall net emissions. The gap analysis, for example, not taking into account the advancement in science or things that might not have been included in state reports in certain sectors, but there are some sectors like waste management, natural working lands, and industrial sectors that were not necessarily robustly covered in our previous state reports. And so that's one opportunity that we're taking with our planning grant funding, is to expand the measures that potentially could be implemented across these various sectors. The benefits that we're also including are not only the direct greenhouse gas reductions, but we're also taking environmental justice and equity, resiliency, any potential cost savings, workforce development, and also looking at health benefits, or sometimes what we call co-benefits for air pollution. So for example, if we can convert to a cleaner fuel, we could potentially reduce PM 2.5, and that's a pollutant that has been directly connected to childhood asthma. Next slide, please. So this is a busy slide, but I always like to show a high-level breakdown of our measures by sector. So collectively across all of these reports and all the sectors shown here, we have over 300 measures that we are looking into for prioritization. We're in a great position to have lots of options to look at from our implementation grant, but we need to take into account what is in our authority to implement, whether or not it's shovel ready, something we can do today. Is it innovative? We need to be able to position ourselves when we're applying for our implementation grant to make sure that we have the most competitive application, but also keeping in mind having equal distribution across the state, and also taking into account our underserved and underrepresented communities. What you will see on the far right is some of the sectors that I mentioned we're already going to be expanding upon our gap analysis. For example, waste management landfill sector. This just shows there was one measure in our existing state reports. That is not representative of what the science says and what technology is out there to be able to further decarbonize this sector. Next slide, please. So these are just a quick overview of how we are prioritizing our measures. So as I mentioned, what are the relative emission reductions? This is not only prioritizing to see what we should focus on from a state perspective, but it's also going to help us be competitive for implementation grant because it relates to the scoring rubric that EPA has put out. Air pollution benefits, so not just reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, but what other co-benefits can occur from a measure. Can we implement? So is there any policy limitations? Is it something that's ready now? And then also, what are the financial aspects of that measure? And then lastly, looking at benefits to both our underserved and underrepresented communities. Next slide. So these are some examples of PCAP measures, specifically transportation, building, and power programs. I'm not going to go through these in an exhaustive list. We will record this presentation and we'll have a copy of this presentation at the conclusion of tonight's session. But this is to show you some examples of where we are going to solicit for feedback and ideas on grant ideas, but it allows you to have some examples of what potentially could be included as a priority measure under our PCAP. So for example, we could develop a rebate or an incentive program that could provide funding gaps for schools and transit buses, so under vehicle electrification. Looking at having a tax-exempt leases, which could lower costs for fleet electrification. Looking at, in terms of decarbonizing buildings, there could be ways to supplement existing DOE and federal tax credits for heat pumps and further weatherization. And we can also look at, are there ways to incentivize the installation of renewable energy and energy storage systems in commercial and residential buildings? Again, this is not end all be all, but just some illustrative examples. Next slide, please. So other things to consider, and things that we're considering, but we also want our stakeholders to consider when providing feedback, is developing opportunities to scale immediate climate solutions. So that's where our shovel readiness aspect will come in. Most importantly, to benefit underserved communities and improve air quality. But we're also working on workforce development. The ways that we can look at in terms of measures and activities is it could be demonstration or pilot projects. It could be qualifying contractors for technical studies, marketing and sharing lessons learned, and then also potentially looking at measurement and verification of ways that we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Some other things that we're looking into that might not be as well known or broadly known or or really part of sectors we call difficult to decarbonize, is on the industrial side of things. For example, looking at ways to have more efficient and cleaner industrial processes. That can be done via energy audits or strategic energy management, equipment updates, upgrades, and then waste heat utilization. When we're looking at ways to manage thermal loads, that's a way of saying what energy is needed in your household to make your home more comfortable, whether it's warmer or colder, or keeping it at a neutral temperature. That takes energy and is considered thermal load. So how can we make something like that more efficient? Some other ways to think about ways to decarbonize across North Carolina is also looking at things like landfill gas capture and reuse, or it could be manufacturing using low carbon embodied materials. Next slide. So you've heard on a few slides, underserved and underrepresented communities. Under Justice 40, North Carolina is going to ensure that at least 40% of our implementation award will go to underserved and underrepresented communities. We are taking this into account through various aspects, not only the prioritization process, but also where projects can be implemented. We're going to be very strategic about that using the CGEST and the EJ Screen tool. But what we're not going to go into those details today, but the one action item that we will that we want our stakeholders to look into is going to our NCDEQ community mapping tool and being aware of what burdens and what underrepresented, underserved communities might be in your area. And we would like you to look at this, and if you have ideas on projects that could specifically be tailored towards your communities, or if there's communities you know of that could benefit from specific actions through our implementation grants and other efforts, please provide that by going to this mapping tool and at the conclusion of our presentation using the links that we provided to provide that feedback. Next slide.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. So just to give you some more information here on timelines and next steps. Next slide, please. So we've talked about stakeholder engagement, webinars like tonight. We've had in-person workshops, including an industrial decarbonization workshop last week that was hosted by the Clean Energy Tech Center. And we also have options for input to happen online, and we'll show you that in a future slide. Next slide, please. So we had 2 in-person events in the last week and a half, one in Fayetteville, one in Morganton. Of course, we're here tonight and we're planning another virtual event in January. I think that date might change, so don't hold us to that, but we will send out information to our list of those who've indicated they want more information about these energy projects. And for those who would like to share information in the meantime, there are multiple ways to share that with us. Additionally, we are reaching out to low-income and disadvantaged communities to engage them and to talk about what's important to them, what their priorities are, what benefits they would like to see in their community, and what their concerns are. So in addition to the CGEST tool or the EJ Screen tool, and Stephanie just showed you the CEJST or the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool map. In addition to that, we do want to talk to communities to make sure that we understand how they perceive themselves. We're going to partner with local with local organizations to share this information, including councils of government, community leaders, advocates, partners, and other service organizations in these areas. And then all the feedback that we get, so both through events like the one tonight and from reaching out in more focused ways, we're going to incorporate into our PCAP, and we will adjust our final draft to incorporate that feedback. And that will help us prioritize where we're going to focus, especially when we get to the implementation grant phase 2, where we're going to put that money to achieve these carbon reductions in North Carolina. And we will continually update our website I know it says on here in plain language, but make sure that in addition to including the science and the technical information, make sure that it's communicated in a way that everyone can understand. Next slide, please. So I do want to talk a little bit about benefits to communities. Obviously, you've heard from multiple speakers now about the potential air quality benefits. When you don't have a combustion source nearby, it can reduce fine particulate matter in the air, it can reduce air toxics, and it can reduce climate pollution. And that's true whether you're talking about electricity generation or what's happening in your own home. And I know you're probably aware of some of the other DOE programs out right now that do have opportunities for people to change to either more efficient home appliances or to look at removing combustion sources entirely and going to electrification for heating, air conditioning, hot water, and so on. So listed here are some of the benefits that can be qualified or quantified. So those co-pollutant emission reductions, indoor or ambient health benefits, climate resilience, and part of that would be reduced outages. So in areas that do have climate impacts, we do have information about outages, and that's obviously something we want to reduce to increase the resilience of a community. We also want to help them recover faster. That's another way of increasing resilience. We want to make sure that we're improving access to different services, amenities, and access to clean energy. Right now in North Carolina, we tend to see, for example, solar farms, the large ones, are concentrated in certain parts of the state. We want to make sure that we're having access to clean energy, such as solar energy, in all parts of the state, and not just on wealthy individuals' homes, but on all individuals' homes, and make that access more broad. And there's other federal programs out there that will also assist with this. We also want to look at jobs created in these communities. So that could include some workforce development, some job training, and also just information to make sure people are aware of what jobs are out there and what training programs are available. And then additionally, as we work to provide other energy benefits in communities, it can reduce the energy costs. We definitely focus on communities that have high energy burdens. So that is the ratio of the energy utility costs for people's homes compared to their income. And we find that in some rural areas that are served by small utilities, they can have a higher cost for electricity. And if that's an area or individuals that have a hard time affording that, we need to look at ways to help them afford that, such as weatherization programs. Next slide. So here you see another map version from the CEJST tool. This shows disadvantaged tracks by color. And on the right, I talked a little bit about energy burden. So here we look at the top counties with the highest number of census tracts that have both a high energy burden and low income when we look at that census data. And you can see where some of those are listed on the right. And then based on environmental indicators, socioeconomic indicators, environmental justice indices, actually 46 total indices, all that data goes into creating these CEJST map tools. And that can help us get a picture of what different communities are like across the state and where we might want to concentrate some of the projects to address these issues. Next slide. All right, so that's the end of our presentation. Next, we're going to move into breakout sessions and discussion. So we're going to have a variety of breakout session topics. We're going to have these groups meet for 30 minutes. There'll be someone in each who will help moderate that discussion, make sure we're taking notes on the questions that come up. We'll answer all the questions that we can. We'll take notes and get back to you on the ones that we don't have the data for to answer tonight. At the end of this 30 minutes, we'll come back together as a group. Each of those moderators will report out what are some of the top things that they heard from their group. And then we'll have a chance for the whole group to ask questions and make comments. So David, I think we're ready to move into that. And do you want to explain how people can join those breakout sessions?
Sure. Thank you, Julie. I appreciate that. So we have on the books tonight 6 breakout session categories that reflect back to the greenhouse gas inventory that Mike talked about and where those big energy expenditures that we have and where we're trying to target some of our interventions. And we are hoping that you, as audience participants in this webinar tonight, have curiosity and perhaps potential projects and potential interests that line up with those categories that you see on the screen. So there should be breakout sessions that align up with those same categories, and we're just asking you to self-select, pick the ones that are of the most interest to you, participate in those information breakout sessions with any kind of information exchange you'd like, sharing project ideas, sharing interest. And this is just really an opportunity for you all to network with each other and tell us a lot about what's on your mind within those individual sessions. And this is just an idea about what some of the feedback we would be interested in getting. It doesn't have to be limited to this. This is just a little something to kind of prime the pump, to kind of get you all thinking about what you could be talking about. We're interested in any kind of program or projects that you think you are ready to implement right now that you think might have an impact in one of those categories that we talked about. Do you see any gaps in your communities where you think some of these funds could help you move from point A to point B? Or are there barriers, limitations, or other gaps that you are facing that you think we might be able to help alleviate or kind of offset so that you could move forward with some of those things that you kind of been thinking about, would like to move forward with, and we could help you with those. And then lastly, just wanted to throw this out here just because you'll see this again and we'll have this when we come back. The purpose of the breakout session is really just to kind of focus on those 6 areas, but that doesn't mean that that's everything that we're going to talk about. So you have an opportunity when you walk away from here, if you think of something, you network with someone, you come up with another idea, we have each of these links available to you, and this will be in the materials as well, to be able to submit implementation grant ideas to us or to request additional information from us that might help you formulate a better idea. So that's kind of what we're hoping to do with the breakout sessions. I am hoping that after we have a breakout session, we'll do a little bit of a 2-minute summary from each of those. Hopefully that will kind of level set the playing field. And then, like Julie said, after the summary presentations, we will open it up to the chat group and you will be able to post your questions in the chat. We'll try to answer as many of them as we can. If we can't get to all of them before the end of the webinar this evening, we will do our best to answer those when we put out the material for the webinar after we have concluded for the evening. So at this point, I think I can hit this great start breakout session button. And you all should be able to see the breakout sessions in the participant list in WebEx. The breakout sessions will last for 30 minutes, and you are able to join one or you're only able to join one. So take one that you think is of most interest, and we will see you on the back side in about 30 minutes.
Hey, David, this is Bridget. Real quick, it says that I have been assigned to the agricultural breakout session. Do you have a
I'm
way-
industry.
Okay. Well, we can
That should be
switch it up.
flipped. Can we select? Can we like select one the right ones and go there, or do we have to go to?
You should be able to select the right one that you want it to go to.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
I'm not sure what your screens look like, but I'm gonna just tell you what I see on mine. There is a button on the bottom of my screen that says breakout sessions, and when clicking that, it opens up a list of breakout sessions on the right side of my screen. Um, do you see a participants list on your screen? There's also a button on the side. Well, on when showing the list of them, there's this thing on the side of mine that says join. No problem. Okay, so let's see. If you're on your computer screen, and there should be like participants, like I have mine as like a long list. At the bottom of that, it says apps, participants, and chat. So maybe try clicking participants and seeing if that'll do anything, or beside the mute and start video button, it may be somewhere on that bottom of your screen. Kylan, if you could unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you.
So what do you see on your screen right now?
I see India Bryant's name as co-host, and on the right, I
Mhm.
see her as a panelist, and I see chat. And both chat and participants are grade. I ungrade chat and I just see, what's your name?
I'm India.
India. Okay, I see your name and my name.
Okay.
As a participant, and I've tried the little symbols on the side and they don't seem to do anything. Anything else you want to ask?
So you don't see anything on the bottom of your screen?
Yeah, a chat, participants, leave
Oh, that's all on the
meeting,
bottom.
more options, reactions, and mute. And then over far left, I see hide captions.
Okay. And you said well, yeah, that would be. Okay. I'm trying to think. Under your. All right. So when you're at the top part of your screen, do you see File, Edit, Share, View?
See what?
Do you see something that says Hide Menu Bar or Show Menu Bar at the top of your screen?
No, let me see a little red button. I'm afraid to click it, but I will. It won't do anything. Webinar info, the time, nothing.
Okay. Try clicking Webinar Info. Oh wait, well, no, that's not gonna. Okay. I'm sorry,
So,
I'm trying to see it from from your perspective, and that's kind of hard.
well, I appreciate you trying.
Yeah.
There's just the webinar link, the number, audio connections, the stuff to get on is what I
Okay.
see.
And do you see, by chance, I'm just trying to figure everything out. So you said on the bottom of your thing, you just see mute or the in button in some chat, and the participants button is grayed out, correct?
Right.
And it's not letting, do you see anything that has like a circle and like 3 dots beside it?
Yeah, I clicked on that, but actually there is a big black section covering that up that is transcribing what we're saying.
Okay, so that's probably the captions. And you could okay, so you have you can turn those off if you would like, and maybe that'll
Hide
show.
captions, I did it.
Okay.
So no, it's just, it just shows you as the co-host now. Great big square.
Okay, I'm not sure.
You know, I'm one of those people who couldn't get on originally and came through some other means to register.
Got you.
I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but it looks like I'm the only one who hasn't been signed to a group.
Well, there's a few other people that are still in here, and I'm not sure if they aren't able to get in as well or what.
Or they just don't choose to, maybe.
Right, but I can see if I can move you into a, no, that
I
doesn't work.
wanted to go into the residential and commercial building.
Okay, let me see if I can. Yeah, I don't think it'll allow me to move it. Okay, I'm trying to think of another way that could potentially,
I
'cause I'm
think
not
I'm a
sure if I ever
co-host,
use it.
actually.
Huh? I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I think they brought me in as a co-host.
No, because you're still sitting as an attendee, because you're in the attendee list.
Oh, okay, I'm good on that.
So I'm texting one of my colleagues to see if they know a way to bring you in. Okay. Can you try clicking the participants button? It won't allow you to do that at all.
No, I can do that. And your name and my name come up.
And nothing at the top about breakout sessions and main webinar.
Oh, there it says it there. Breakout sessions have started. You can join any session. Show all breakout sessions. I'll click on that one. Shall I do that now and join?
Yeah, you could definitely do that.
I'm so sorry if I missed that before.
Oh no, you're totally fine.
All right. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
So I think we have about 10 seconds left in the breakout sessions before everybody starts coming back. There we go. Okay, is everybody back? Awesome. So I'm hoping everybody can see the six categories that we were talking about before we went into breakout sessions. I'm hoping everybody had a great time. We definitely heard a lot of great ideas. So let me just start with the facilitator for the electric power section. If you just want to give us a really quick report out, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. That was me. So we had some great comments and suggestions, and I'll just share a few of them with a larger group now. So one was reviewing Duke's decarbonization plan and looking for gaps in their plan. Additionally, they have some suggestions in that plan. I guess still more than suggestions, some plans such as using hydrogen in their transition, but that's not currently available. So figuring out how that transition is going to happen. And looking at a way to increase measurement and verification. The plan was done 2 years ago. There's been no measurement or verification about what's been done since. And if there's some way to start filling in that information. Separately, we had some feedback on potential energy efficiency opportunities and how those can be incorporated into energy projects. And we'll have more information about that. A suggestion for solar for community centers and parking lots, particularly in some of those underrepresented areas. There was a question about whether groups can apply or if it has to be individuals for projects under CPRG, and I clarified that both are eligible. Had some questions about energy efficiency. Absolutely, energy efficiency projects qualify, and we talked about some of those. Additionally, we had a suggestion about weatherization and addressing structural issues. So we talked about what's planned for that. We had suggestions on incentivizing whole home decarbonization rather than just a single project on a home and how that can happen, possibly through the Energy Auditors training grant. There were suggestions for larger cities like Charlotte and Raleigh to work with smaller cities and with us to help share information, sample projects that could happen and how to implement those projects. And then I understand there's going to be some more information on a website here about North Carolina programs, including information from local governments. And we're going to get some more information on that so we can share that. And I know we are the electricity sector, but that's what we talked about. Rather than specifically talking about the electrical grid.
Excellent. Thank you, Julie. So Mike, I think you're next up with transportation.
All right, thanks, David. So we heard a number of comments about the Clean Transportation Plan, the state's Clean Transportation Plan, and supporting several elements of it. Specifically, there were 3 individuals supporting funding the Clean Transportation Team, which was a measure in the Clean Transportation Plan, and then also the VMT Reduction Toolkit and study. There was an emphasis on that from at least 3 folks in our session. There was also discussion of the need for charging infrastructure in rural areas for electric vehicles, and also notes of the need to emphasize bike and ped alternatives as an alternative, and then also a potential incentive program for electric bicycles, as well as transit and school buses that we had already mentioned earlier in the presentation. Urban trips, oftentimes less than 2 miles, bikes are a good option, and there's some examples of that elsewhere in the US. We also heard a suggestion to keep the transportation sector a fuel agnostic approach, and that was suggested, and a consideration of renewable natural gas for some heavy duty vehicles to be considered. There was also a specific project. And so David, I want to make sure we put up the that QR code again with the form, the link to the form before we end tonight, because I want to make sure
We will
this
do that.
individual has access to that such that they can submit a specific project for a specific rural town focused on EVs in the public safety sector. And then one final thing, which is going to represent a follow-up, I did not fully know the answer to, and if any of my friends on here can help out, great. If not, we'll follow up. There was a question about whether there's the Buy America certificate requirement under the CPRG, and I apologize that I could not answer that. But if anyone else can help with that, that'd be great. And that'll sum it up. Oh, and also our colleague Tim from Commerce was on and emphasizing the importance of the workforce areas and the need for a strong need to cultivate a strong labor force. And we talked about the need for electricians and other skill sets in electrifying this sector.
Excellent. Very good. Bridget, I think you're next up for industry.
All right. So I actually had only one individual join me for the industry, but we did have a really, really great discussion. So she was in infrastructure construction, an asphalt company. And so some of her top concerns were, first of all, because she does not work in the cement industry, there is no focus really happening on decarbonizing other construction materials apart from cement. And so she's having a hard time finding support from anyone as she's trying to decarbonize their company. Another really interesting aspect of that was, so as a company who primarily interfaces with public entities, publicly procured entities like DOTs, they are pretty much unable to make any investments in decarbonization because it's always a lowest bid in order to get these jobs. And so as they're trying to put money into these projects, they just don't have the funds to support that when they're trying to win these projects based on lowest bids. So they have just a handful of these pretty small projects that they're trying to implement, but can't because they don't have the finances that they need and still be able to win jobs. And so that was a huge concern. She kind of just expressed the lack of innovation that happens in the construction materials world. There's just not a lot of time and money being put into it, but there are some pretty easy things that could happen in the construction materials recycling world. But on the other side of that, DOTs are pretty resistant and conservative to change. And so even when there are some new ideas that work pretty well for lowering emissions, DOTs are oftentimes not open to it because it's new and unproven in their minds. So those are kind of the top takeaways from industry.
Excellent. Thank you, Bridget. And I just want to point out to folks in the comment section or in the chat section that Connor has answered the Buy America question with a resource there for you. So for the person that had that concern, there's that information there. Next up is Helen with residential and commercial buildings. Helen, I think you're muted for some reason.
My mistake. Hi, thank you. We've had a robust discussion. So there were a number of people who represented some faith-based organizations, and what was really wonderful to hear is that they're enthusiastic about supporting our citizens, right, and how to weatherize their homes or get heat pump water heaters in, or energy efficient appliances, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things that they have asked is, like, what if we, because could there be training, like could there be training like for a navigator, so that there is one person that will know how to then navigate the people who are asking for the information. I thought that was a brilliant idea personally. So to train navigators. There was also a specific question about, okay, these tax credits are available. Where do I go to? Who do I contact about how these actually work? Does the money go, through the state and then so there are a number of questions about how the rebates are actually going to work. And then also how to get solar on buildings that are specifically owned by a nonprofit that is interested in putting solar on their buildings. And collaboration was also another one. So the majority of people were in the Wake County, Durham area. And so how do they know what Raleigh is doing? And so I told the person that I will follow up and give them a contact for the Raleigh CPRG coordinator. And then the important point was, to have a one-stop shop for all these particular issues, programs that are going on, because people don't know about them, and how the state can actually create the framework so it is duplicated around the state. So for instance, Orange County has a really good program where they do have pretty much a one-stop shop. How can we replicate that around the state so the information is getting out in a timely manner? And we talked a lot about the weatherization assistance program and what's happening, the new stuff that's happening under the 5-year bill as well. David, anything I missed? And important point. How about bulk purchases of heat pump water heaters? And then have the navigators then be able to, or the cities who are in charge of the heat pumps, and I might be totally screwing this up, but so buy them in bulk, then have training for the people who know about the heat pump water heaters, can then say, this is how you go and get them installed. This is, so have the whole system in place so that they'll get installed in the right places.
Right.
Did I get that right, Dave? I think
Yep.
I got that.
I think the whole idea was to buy in bulk. Therefore, we have an additional cost savings, and then a uniformity across platforms and programs of ways to get things installed so things go faster.
Right. That was buildings. A lot of
right.
great stuff.
Thank you, Helen.
Mhm.
Stephanie, you're up next with waste and materials management.
Thanks, David. I think we had a very similar conversation that Bridget had. We had one participant for the duration of our sector discussions, and our discussion revolved around food waste recovery and reducing food loss. And specifically, we were speaking with an individual from Simply Gesture with Guilford County that has specifically developed a food waste a program in schools to divert food waste. And it was, I don't want to say simply because I don't want to diminish the importance, but they developed a program where they put a refrigerator in at the school, and when kids did not drink their milk or prepackaged foods, that food went into the refrigerator, and then those students were able to take that food. And they had a very impressive statistics that they were able to divert 1.2 million pounds of food over a course of a year in one county. And it was through the implementation of 126 refrigerators. So that is definitely a very important area of getting food to a vulnerable population, and is a relatively straightforward program. But still, with that in mind, there are still some gaps that are, if we had all the money that we could put into the waste management sector, there still are challenges with getting food to the right places, having capacity issues at food banks, having refrigerated trucks, having people that can drive those trucks. And also another thing that was very interesting too is that from a food waste harvesting perspective, it can be more advantageous to a farmer to not farm that food and let it rot than actually harvest that food and then go donate it and simply just get a thanks for your donation or your receipt that could do a tax write-off. Is there a way to provide some more financial incentives for that farmer? And then lastly, which I thought was a really interesting idea, because I've only seen this in select areas, is having a dedicated area in a grocery store for some of those food that is about to spoil but still has the ability to be utilized in some form or another. Might not be pretty, but showing having a dedicated area where someone could walk to and see all of the foods that will be discounted. And then same thing with meats. I think meats are one of those things where you'll discount and they don't have one dedicated area, and not everyone has time to go look for those red or yellow stickers or whatever food location that has that, and calling attention to some of those opportunities that could also expand the ability for some individuals that do not typically have the ability to buy some of the fresher perishable foods could have the opportunity to be able to do so.
Great. Is that it?
But that's it for now. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. And last, we have Mr. Connor, who is there for the agricultural and natural working lands.
And continuing with the theme here, we had a great conversation with one participant that joined the ag and NWL side, which honestly might be for the best, because I'm not the DEQ expert or the expert in our own office, but I filled in to try to at least fill the gap here tonight. So probably for the best, a ton of folks didn't ask me technical questions I couldn't answer. That being said, had a good conversation, talked about a variety of different kind of needs, thinking about healthy soils initiatives and other types of ways to engage agricultural community in particular, and farmers in ways to implement best practices on their farms that can reduce or increase carbon sequestration. And one big thing that kind of kept coming up is just the general cost of capital right now to invest in projects on farms, and any way that we could help, whether that's through grants or even like low interest loans to help with installing different projects, or electrifying equipment, or other types of investments that farms make and would recoup, but just doesn't quite pencil right now. Where maybe if there was an opportunity to get some cheaper capital, maybe that could move the needle a little bit. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a potential avenue for some engagement. So
excellent. Awesome. Okay, so then I think now I just want to go ahead. I'm hoping that I'm still sharing the screen that you all can see, where again, the links are for those opportunities for feedback to us.
You're not sharing, David.
How about now?
There you go.
Awesome. So there's the link. We've had our rapid fire report out. And so now we're at the point where we've tried to give you as much information as we can during the presentation. We give it an opportunity to kind of gather together and give us some great ideas and talk about specific projects across those 6 sectors. Now we're just going to open it up to individual questions. If there's a burning question that we have not yet answered for you, or you've not had an opportunity to express, we're hoping that you can put that in the chat, and we will see what we can do in the next 7 or 8 minutes to try to answer those questions as much as possible. And then anything that we can't get answered, we're going to go ahead and try to answer after the fact when we wrap up all the materials and distribute it to the group of participants. So I now can't see the chat.
We can see the chat, and I
Awesome.
don't see a question in there now. Very quickly, I do want to respond to a question that I heard from another one of the breakout groups. So this one was about a navigator to help people navigate options. Do just want to mention that we're also applying for funding for home energy auditors. That would be someone to come into our home, help make recommendations for all the things that could be done on the energy efficiency and alternative energy sources and weatherization, all of that, with some cost estimates, with some information about expected savings, and just to help the homeowner navigate that and make a very informed decision. And then separately, there's additional funding available also from DOE to train contractors to do the work so that we don't run into the kind of, I guess, labor supply chain issues that might happen if everybody wants a heat pump at the same time. So we do have funding coming to address both of those. And then separately, I heard the question about navigating rebates and options and all of that. We do hope to have more information on that in our website. We are looking at a way to have more of a one-stop shop to give links and information for all the different opportunities out there, how to qualify, and so on. So that would include eventually, once all the programs are rolled out, that would include the IRA rebates, solar for all, weatherization, and other programs. I guess workforce development being an important one that we will want to make sure everyone's aware of all the different opportunities that are out there in terms of training programs that are available. I see a question now.
Yeah, so Julie, Rob asked, is there someone in Wake County who's a CPRG county level planning or implementation grant?
I don't know that. We're going to have to get back on that. I don't know that it's at the Wake County level. There's one in the what used to be called Triangle J County of Government, but the greater Raleigh area. So we can follow up and get that information.
And Victoria says, our nonprofits work on energy efficiency for LMI households for commercial industrial customers, K through 12 schools. We also help with planning renewables, battery storage for cleaner energy resilience, and e-transportation to reduce carbon emissions. Would love to know how we could partner to get to target disadvantaged communities in North Carolina.
Would love to have a conversation with you, Vicki, about all of that. We've had discuss some ideas here internally for creating something kind of like a resiliency hub that might be centered on a school, that might also have solar or storage or EV batteries, that could be a place for people to come after a natural weather event, as well as having training. Maybe training is not the right word, but education around alternative energy and information on workforce development opportunities for graduates. So yes, let's talk more. Energy efficiency too. I know we talked about that as being open to both residences, commercial entities, and institutions. And I think there's a real need for that in North Carolina disadvantaged communities. Thank you.
And Don has stated that agrivoltaics for combined PV and farming, Warren Wilson College is pursuing this, also electric tractors with PV charging.
Just heard about electric tractors recently. Anybody else want to field that one? I saw a great presentation about combined photovoltaics and farming. I believe it was a broccoli farm in Massachusetts that I saw a presentation about, where broccoli likes a little bit of shade, so it increased the yields of the broccoli, and then also had the income from the photovoltaics.
I can't go into detail, but as the de facto natural working land ag non-expert on the call today, that would be the type of project that I think would fit in great if there was some type of like that lower cost capital I was talking about, especially if folks would want to pursue it and you could get those higher yields like you're talking about, like a way to get it funded and then kind of keep funding projects as it goes. That agrivoltaic revolving loan fund probably needs some work in terms of the name, but anyway, yeah. But I think that would be, I've seen some really cool projects.
And I think I will add that, you know, we if it's okay with everybody here, we'll probably share some of these with external partners who might be able to assist on these. Obviously, the Clean Energy Fund, the Green Bank in North Carolina, we want to make sure there's interest in a fund like this.
And Gary Smith commented that the navigators would be like those helping with the ACA.
ACA.
That's the
I'm not
Affordable
sure,
Care
Gary, if you
Act.
could-
Oh, of course.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so back when the Affordable Care Act came out, one of the largest things was all the different insurance plans because you had private insurance providers as well as the pool. And so there was always someone there to kind of help you figure out what options would be best for you.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And just for anyone who's curious, the federal tax rebates are already available on a number of different things, and there's information on that on the IRS website. And that's separate from any home energy rebates that'll be available through the state of North Carolina in the future.
So any other questions from the group? Anybody want to post anything here in the chat that we can kind of help you out with?
I see there's a contact in the chat for
Rob.
Central Pines NC. Yeah, that what used to be Triangle J Council of Governments is now the Central Pines Council of Government.
Excellent.
I just want to make one quick plug. I know I've heard workforce come up a few times. I know would be happy to facilitate a connection with Caroline Sullivan. Our office is kind of heading up our clean energy workforce development. And they're working on some really cool stuff. I know there's been announcements for a Siemens grant that focused on EV charging workforce development. They're working with community colleges to build out trainings and curriculum to stand that up. But I know their outfits or what was it? I just had it pulled up so I wouldn't have to go back. The North Carolina Business Committee for Education. Happy to, yeah, they're looking to expand for workforce development training outside of just those specific areas too. So happy to facilitate any connections there if folks feel like they would like to plug in if they're interested in building some of these projects and building out some workforce development.
Excellent. Well, we're a little past time from our 8:30 end. So I just want to do one last call just to make sure that we have captured everything that anybody could want to share with us for the evening. Go ahead and just kind of slide those into the chat. We'll kind of look at them and see if we can answer them real quick. If not, we will definitely be, I see someone has raised a hand, but I don't know who that hand is. If they just want to put those comments in the chat, that would be very, very helpful. And then we can call it an evening and thank everybody tremendously for their participation tonight. There's a lot of great conversation and a lot of great ideas. Any final thoughts from anyone?
Not seeing anything in the chat yet.
I think Tim raised his hand for something, but I just want to make sure.
I'm hearing the QR codes are not working.
I was waving goodbye.
Oh, waving goodbye. Thank you, Tim.
Oh.
The QR codes are not working.
Is anyone else able to make those QR codes work? I'm going to try it here.
I am too.
It did just so it says the code campaign has been disabled for some reason. But my scanner's working fine, so it's not my fault.
We're
All
going to
right.
fix that.
We will fix that.
There's
Thank
also an email at the bottom of the slide, so you can copy that cprg@deq.nc.gov email address. You can also put it in the chat. That's another way to give us information. You can also go to the DEQ website and the form is linked there, and I can put that link in the chat as well.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll
Billy.
figure out why that code's not working and get that done.
Yeah, it's both of the QR codes
That's a
that
shame.
aren't working, so.
Yeah, they were literally working. It was working 2 days ago. I don't know what happened there. Sarah, just ahead, I just started thinking like, wait, where can we get the form? And Sarah's ahead of me,
Yeah.
per usual.
Thank you.
We'll make sure that we get that form there. And again, the email is also an option as well. Might be easier just to kind of blurb it all out and get it off and out to us. All right, and then we will work to resurrect the QR codes as well. And those QR codes will be coming out in the materials after the presentation there too. So we'll reactivate those and then they'll be available to you shortly. We hope to kind of wrap all this up and get this information out as quickly as we can tomorrow or Monday. All right. Again, I just want to thank everybody that was here. Lots of great ideas, lots of great information. Thank you for your time and your attention and your commitment to all of this. I also want to thank my awesome panel of folks and speakers and help and support. Y'all have been great. Thank you for your time on a Thursday night. I have a great evening, and I appreciate everybody's time and attention. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Well.
Bye.